The following is brought to you by Mighty One Entertainment.
After an 8-year wait, released in June, EA DICE gives us Mirror's Edge Catalyst. Let's see what we have here.
EA DICE and Electronic Arts released Mirror's Edge Catalyst on the 7th of June. Now, while I never really spent any appreciable amount of time with the original Mirror's Edge, as it ended up stacked high in my pile of shame, great games I never quite got into or played, I was pretty interested in Catalyst. After playing through games like Dying Light and experiencing some well-done first-person parkour, I was eager to play a game that the masses claimed did it the best in the original.
Faith, I'm scared.
The story of Catalyst follows Faith Connors, a young freerunner in the city of Glass, fresh from juvie. The nation of Cascadia is now under the heel of the conglomerate, made up of 13 corporations. The most powerful of these is controlled by Gabriel Kruger, who has monopolized the city's law enforcement under his Kruger Security Division. Faith's family was killed during a city riot, and Faith was also separated from her younger sister, who was presumed dead. After being released from juvie, Faith meets up with old colleagues, gets sent on a mission, becomes sidetracked, and soon after, it's plot after plot, conspiracy after conspiracy, and so the game unfolds.
Stop!
The story, however, was a weak one filled with cliché after cliché, including the usual suspects, the cut-and-paste characters we've seen in just about every other action movie or game out there. None of these characters or the story resonated with me, and just left the game feeling hollow.
I'm so sorry.
The voice acting was your standard good B-movie affair, and really did nothing to help propel the bland story either. The overall audio left much to be desired. I personally did not feel the scores. I guess for the era being depicted it was fine, but it still fell flat for me, again doing nothing to elevate the experience.
So, there's a fighter in you after all.
Catalyst is clearly not a game for everyone and explains why the original held the title of sleeper hit. First up, apart from the story not being very interesting, Catalyst seems to have a slow build-up. I mean, in my opinion, the game never really gets exciting, but it does improve, only slowly. I spent the entire game with a "is this it? Is this all there is to this game?" attitude.
Wait, what? That it?
What else is there?
I was really expecting a lot more from Mirror's Edge Catalyst. A part of this slow build-up also comes in the form of a learning curve. This isn't your standard first-person experience. It's not about guns, knives, and blunt objects. Mirror's Edge Catalyst is all about traversing the city using your parkour skills, and when the going gets rough and you meet up on some resistance, you duke it out hand-to-hand style. So you'll be spending a large portion of the game perfecting your parkour skills. It, as with all things, becomes easier with practice, but was a bit annoying for me the first half hour or so. There were points in the training session that I couldn't figure out what the devs really wanted or expected me to do. Points where I felt should have been easier, more automated, more intuitive, but I guess I can safely say I eventually got the hang of it. But even then I was not satisfied.
There. I hope it's worth all the trouble.
You're able to upgrade your skills as you progress, but I'm going to have to say these upgrades were not very impressive and did very little in the way of adding much needed excitement to this game. And many of these upgrades just left me wondering why she couldn't just do these moves right out the gate. It's not like this was her first rodeo. The story clearly states she's been doing her free running before juvie.
Don't get me wrong, they meant well.
While on this topic, let's go straight into the combat system. Now, I heard a lot of people complaining about the inclusion of guns in the original, and most are happy with the exclusion in Catalyst. Well, here's the thing, and remember, this is coming from someone who spent no real time with the original. What should have been done here is this. Fine, the guns felt off in the original. What you do is not ixnay the guns altogether. Find a way to polish that mechanic. Find a way to make it work. To have someone embark on these dangerous missions Faith sets out on, she really should have some kind of weapon. Fine, devs use the whole "this is the future, the guns are synced to the user's DNA and can't be used by anyone else" rubbish. Fine, go with that, but does this mean Faith couldn't have a weapon of her own? Even if it's not a gun, what about a melee weapon, a club, a knife, a sword? At this point, if she had a spatula, it would be an improvement. And this leads me to another point. Faith can't really fight. I mean, I'm sure she's supposed to be able to, but due to the shoddy mechanics, she's like a flailing fool. The combat in Mirror's Edge Catalyst is so flawed. I can't believe the devs had so much time to release a follow-up game, and this is the best they could come up with. Faith has a handful of techniques. Even after you upgrade, she still feels helpless, and this makes most fights boil down to a sloppy, unpolished experience. Now, most of the enemies are pushovers, but even then, what it leaves you with are two extremes. You either face off with an enemy that rolls over after a couple of kicks, or an enemy that you can apparently only defeat by playing tag, running around and landing a strike when you can. Don't let me get started with what happens when you have to fight more than one of these tougher opponents at a time. This final fight was the most irritating. Even after beating them, I felt no sense of satisfaction based on the silly strategy I had to employ to get it done. So the combat is flawed, severely flawed. But what about the rest of the gameplay? Well, here's the thing. Mirror's Edge Catalyst boasts being an open world game. Now this was just unnecessary. There's no point to this. Apparently this is a fad. To get up and say your game is open world, free roaming is supposed to be appealing. It is not. Devs used that term similar to how multiplayer was thrown around some years ago. At one point, every game had to have a multiplayer component apparently, even if it seemed shoehorned in. So one of the many flaws I noticed in Catalyst was this open world nonsense. Catalyst feels like a linear game pretending to be non-linear. You have a semi-open world with nowhere to go really. First up, the city seems empty. There's hardly anyone anywhere, and the fact that you traverse this city using rooftops is no excuse. The way these buildings are designed, the devs could have easily added in some activity on these roofs. The people that you do see reminds me of a fighting game back in the days, like Street Fighter, where you see these animations in the background of a match, people cheering and whatever but no real interaction. Then there are people on these roofs willing to give you side quests. These side missions are another story. At no time did I feel the need to embark on any of these. The game was boring enough as is, and I really just wanted to get to the end credits. These side quests would offer you rewards that you either didn't need or would get from just sticking to the main campaign anyway. Another thing devs should have considered to ramp up the experience would have been a stealth element. Catalyst screams for this, but apparently I'm the only one who heard this scream. It seems EA either played it safe or played it lazy with this title. They either really did not want to deviate from the original game too much or couldn't bother to. I see no point in trying to make only a polished version of a game you released 8 years ago. After all this time, you could have added so much more to the game. The first didn't even do that well. Even more reason to step up your game.
You understand little and know nothing.
A title like this would have been so much better with a better combat system, weapons, and stealth. Stealth in particular, even more so since devs decided against weapons.
It's the imperfections that truly make something unique.
Let's talk visuals. Mirror's Edge is not a good looking game. It looks okay, but not good and certainly not great. The environments are much like the audio and gameplay, uninspiring. Let me first talk about the cutscenes. At some point the skin textures, particularly the men, look quite detailed, but then you look over to the females and they look completely void of detail. Now, I'm not saying the ladies aren't wearing makeup, and I'm not saying their faces should look scruffy with 5 o'clock shadows like the men, but that's the thing. They don't look made up, they look like mannequins or like models pulled from an earlier game from probably an earlier generation. Then still on visuals. There are these sections in the game where you reach to a new area, and there are these wannabe dynamic reveal shots. This was just laughable. These shots do not serve their purpose, simply because they're not dynamic. These visuals do not impress. For a city like this one, this futuristic city of glass, you get a reveal shot like this, mouth should be agape, it should be blowing you away. It did not. This is unimpressive, it's just sad. Maybe if I saw this on the 360, but no, not here EA, not at all. Then there were the glitches. Glitches like these that further added to this disappointing experience. Mirror's Edge Catalyst, while not being a bad game necessarily, isn't a good one either. I'm not one to have high expectations for most games being released, as I'm usually left in marvel when I read or hear other people voicing displeasures at titles like Mighty No. 9 and so many others that left people in heartbreak. But while I wasn't expecting an epic title, I did expect Mirror's Edge Catalyst to be so much more, mainly because of what people said about the first. But this game is definitely one of my biggest disappointments for 2016 so far. It feels like a game that should not have been sold for full price. Like it would have been fine and a whole lot more appreciated if it were, let's say, released for $20. The strongest elements Mirror's Edge Catalyst has going for it in my opinion are these. 1. A great and forgiving checkpoint system. 90% of the time you're put back almost exactly where you expired, and this is great for those annoying sections where Faith's parkour abilities seem not to work as you would want them to. And 2. This game's overall difficulty. Yes, there are a couple times where you'll meet upon an enemy that will not just roll over and die, but for most parts confrontations are a joke. Kick the guy a couple times, ragdoll physics take over, and he's rolling around on the ground, twisted like a pretzel and down for the count. The few times you misjudge or jump and so on isn't going to be that often, so yes, the game isn't that difficult to complete. And lastly on my list of up points for Mirror's Edge Catalyst would be its overall duration. The game is said to be between 8 to 10 hours, but I really don't follow these estimates as every game really depends on the individuals playing it. However, it felt short. Now these up points are up points in this instance for perhaps the wrong reason. They're considered up points by me because they all led me to one main point. With a forgiving checkpoint system, an easy difficulty level, and a relatively short duration, this means I was able to get through this lackluster experience quickly. I generally, based on what I do, love to get through games as quickly as I can, but sometimes there's just a game that you'd probably be happy playing for hours, days, weeks, and even months. Mirror's Edge Catalyst, however, wasn't one of them. This is my opinion, but ultimately your choice.
You be very, very careful with what you say next.